Okay, I think I may have just fucked up. So hopefully that's saved somewhere because I just went off on a long tangent, but let's get into this.
I haven't been watching Beverly Cannoni because that's not how Auntie Bev operates. It's like, well, she's going to deny it. Like, you know it. And then it's going to go to the SJC, and I've heard different things about what will happen when it gets to the SJC. I mean, it would take a lot for the SJC to overturn this. But it's basically comes down to this. There's the rules, and then there's ethical. Like, then there's like, do you have a conscience? And do you just want to win? Because, okay, even if they're
ethical. Are you out of your mind ethical? I cannot believe how much of you have to be a psychopath because you have absolutely no shame and no guilt in any of these things that you say. You are taking fathers away from their children. You are creating so much tragedy. There are so many victims that you have traumatized and re-victimized, including the O'Keefe family. And you continue to sit on here and say, fuck them. Fuck all of them. It is scary. The only people that could do that are psychopaths. Unless you're just caught up in this mob mentality and somebody needs to shake you and you are going to snap out of it one day and say, holy shit, that was really, I can't believe I did that shit, which is probably what a lot of your followers or cult members are going to do one day, is just snap out of it. Hopefully. Otherwise, we're going to live in a fucking society of psychopaths that have no shame or guilt for anything that they do.
They're going to argue in their motion as they do that, like, this was proper, that it was proper for them to, return, to deny this motion or whatever, that basically that, we'll go over it. But even if you believe that the rules say this and the case law says this, whatever, at the end of the day, how can you sleep at night?
Which is, Mr. Yannetti, you had a chance and you didn't.
Thing, transformation.
What, on the juror thing? No, she's going to deny it, and then hell will break loose.
The more I've been listening, I listen to Lawyer talk about this. I listen to Melanie Little and Mark Bellerow talk about this, and I listen to Melanie Mark. Not going to do it. Anyway, if I was them, like, how do you spent 10 weeks of your life on this, and you don't even get credit? Correct, because they were housed together. Yes, together. That's correct. So my question: the pieces that you saw were not embedded in a shirt when you examined them. Correct. Correct. Okay. Thing, transformation.
What, on the juror thing? No, she's going to deny it, and then hell will break loose. But
what do you mean hell will break loose?
Well, if you were a juror and you believe you acquitted someone of murder, and then you found out that they're going to get retried potentially for murder, although I don't think that will happen, juror wouldn't know that, and the defense attorneys try to file a motion just to kind of flesh it out. The DA files a response that basically says, I don't care what the jury says. It doesn't matter. They're done. They didn't do it the right way, so too bad for you. Lawyers should have done this. And then the judge says, I don't want to hear from you either. If you're a juror and you have that on your conscience, what are your options at that point?
Okay, this guy is an attorney. And I went on his website, and he's bragging about getting a rapist a not guilty verdict. This is the type of integrity that we're dealing with this man. Okay? So, but my point is, you are an attorney, an experienced attorney in criminal law, which is way more than I can say for any other law tubers out there, which is probably why you don't have your own YouTube channel, because you know that it's disgusting what they're doing, and you know that it's false information that you're putting out there. But again, you don't care because you're a defense attorney, and that's what you do all the time, is defend yucky people I'm going to say 95% of the time. Now, I know that corruption exists. Once again, I believe there's some serious corruption going on in Idaho, for example. And I'm following that case very closely. And the only reason I got into the Karen Reed case was because it's like crickets in Idaho right now waiting for more information to come out. But the so-called evidence that they have against the person that they've had in prison for almost 2 years, or jail, I'm sorry, is not evidence. It's not evidence. Like, literally not evidence. So, I mean, until there's actual evidence, I I just don't understand it, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. But I wanted to give you some background in the fact that I do know that corruption exists, and I do believe in corruption, and I actually went into this trial thinking that Karen was innocent. But by the end of day one, it became very, very obvious to me that she was very, very guilty. And people ask, well, how did you know that? And it's like common sense. It was just common sense, really. I watched Melanie Little's live stream, and I watched Yellow Cottage Tales live stream, and then I watched a couple people's reaction, and then I processed everything that I'd seen, and then I made my very first YouTube video, which is on this channel, which if you're here listening to it, it's one of the very first ones with my baby boy German Shepherd dog. And it says Karen Reed, Truth and Justice. I think I said BK also, because I talked a little bit about BK on there as well. But anyway, I went in thinking she was innocent, okay? It's obvious to me that she's not. And I am an intelligent person, but I am by no means a genius. I watch investigative procedural shows consistently, and I know how some things work. Okay, but for a lawyer to get on here and consistently every night, like, what is he doing? He's always on YouTube. But apparently he's a practicing attorney. I don't understand it, okay? But for him to say that Judge Cannoni should just trust these jurors that are coming out and fuck the Supreme Court rulings that say that it doesn't matter if you were back there and everybody agreed. There was a juror slip that had a not guilty option on it. This wasn't the first time the jurors came forward. This was the third or fourth note. I can't remember. I want to say, let's see. I want at least third, if not fourth note that they came back with. Okay. So this wasn't like a big surprise. And the way that the jury foreman wrote this note, it leaves no question on what happened. Okay. The Supreme Court ruling that you want to dismiss about Bluford says that the Arkansas Supreme Court concluded that the double jeopardy clause did not prevent the state from retrying Bluford on charges that the jury in his first trial unanimously rejected, relying on the fact that the jury deadlocked on a lesser included offense. This ruling conflicts with the holdings of 5 other state courts. CAC's brief in Bluford urged the Supreme Court to grant review to clarify the scope of the double jeopardy clause protection of jury acquittals. The brief set forth the text and the history of the clause, the double jeopardy clause, including English common law precedents and the framers' debates over the Bill of Rights, demonstrating that under the clause, a jury's acquittal is final, barring either a new trial or successive prosecution. The brief argued that giving prosecutors a second chance to convict Bluford of charges a jury has unanimously rejected conflicts with the Constitution's text and history and the precedents of the Supreme Court, and urged the court to grant review to protect core constitutional values at the heart of the 5th and 14th Amendment. On May 24th, 2012, the Supreme Court handed down a 6-3 decision upholding Arkansas ruling that double jeopardy clause did not prevent the state from retrying Bluford. And there's a ton more of law that I could read, but I'm just saying this is a Supreme Court ruling on the very substance of what you're saying. Can you imagine, you as a defense attorney, the havoc that could be wreaked within our justice system if it just took some jurors that were pro the defendant coming out and saying, you know, I think that this was wrong, but we didn't record it right. And for you to sit there as a lawyer and say that there was confusion and they didn't understand, those slips, I see the slips. I have the slips. I can see what it says. There are each of the charges listed, and there is a not guilty box, and not a box, a line, and a guilty line. Okay, so if they all unanimously agreed on something, then they should have put a little X or check or whatever they wanted to, a little heart on that not guilty line. That was per Alan Jackson's little fit that he had in court. So he really drove home the point that we need to have that not guilty option. And Judge Canone eventually agreed and said, you know what? I don't want to fuck around with these fuckers after this is over. So we're going to go ahead and do it because I know the game that these guys play. And I know what Alan Jackson's MO is. So we're going to do this, and it's going to give me even more ammunition to tell you to go fuck yourself when you come back and say this crap that we all predicted. We all could have predicted this happening. Okay? But for y'all to sit there and say, oh, they didn't know, and these poor jurors, and oh, it's like they're mature, educated adults, which was very evident by the notes that were written. If they disagreed with something, or if they didn't understand something, that's why they have the, I don't know what they call them, bailiffs or something, if they're called bailiffs, but the security guard police officers that they have that stand right outside the jury door as they're deliberating. If they have any issues or any questions, they are to communicate with them, and they will communicate with the court, and whatever needs to be done is done. Okay? They did not have questions. They very clearly said that. And after, if you do your homework about Massachusetts law, they read the I'm forgetting the dynamite clause. I can't remember what it's called right now, but once they read that, if they come back again hung, it's a mistrial. That's how it works. I don't know if that's how it works in everywhere, but I know because I researched that that is how it works in Massachusetts. When they read that and they come back hung, it's an automatic mistrial. So I don't know why that's so confusing. And particularly to Yannetti, who has practiced law in Massachusetts, I think for his entire professional career. And giving these guys kudos for being prosecutors. Any lawyer starts out, as far as I know, I have never met an attorney that didn't start out as either a prosecutor and or a public defender. So, yeah, that's where everybody starts. And they all start there. And if they have integrity and honor, they want to be prosecutors. Okay? But when they want to make money and it's just about the dollar bill, y'all, that's when they go for the D. And they represent these horrific people. This is innocence fraud. And the other thing about these notes and the jury not understanding is that Bev, when Bev would read, Judge Bev would read the notes before this, and then she would ask for feedback from the Commonwealth and from the defense. What did the defense say every time? Let's move this along. Let's move it along. Let's have a mistrial. I think that they've deliberated enough. Clearly, they're not going to come to any conclusion. It's a hung jury. It's a mistrial. That's what Yannetti said every single time. Okay, so that was his feedback. So I'm sorry that you are not intelligent enough to figure that out. And it's really sad as an attorney, because to me, it's either you're completely incompetent, or you're just being completely unethical and spreading a bunch of misinformation, knowing that you have credibility among all of these people who are not in the legal field for profession, and they don't know, so they're trusting you. They look to people who have legal professions to give them factual information. And I gotta say, the law tubers that I've seen, the only one I give any credit to is Scott Reich on Crime Talk. He's awesome. He's funny. He gives it to you straight. He doesn't fuck around. And he, it's quick in and out. He does I don't know if he does one quick episode a day. Sometimes it depends if he's in trial, then we don't see him for a while. But the guy is a practicing criminal defense attorney, and you can tell he still has integrity. And he doesn't go on these gross, grifting YouTube channels and try to promote getting a murderess out of going to prison. It's disgusting. Again, stop making excuses. The judge has no obligation to do any of the shit you're saying that she should do. And I highly doubt she will. I really hope she doesn't. Because she has bent over backwards to give the defense as much rope as she possibly can. And I think that they just may have hung themselves with the whole, let's put a not guilty on the verdict slip. For her to say, dude, I did that just because you wanted it. It's not even the way that we have done it in Massachusetts for how many decades, and we did it for you, and so it was there, and now you're still coming with this shit. They are not kindergartners, okay? They're educated, mature adults. Once again, if they had issues, if they had questions, they had plenty of opportunity to speak up. Besides the fact that, are Yannetti and Jackson shy? If they had an issue with this mistrial, you think that they would have just not said something? I mean, Jackson's I don't really give a shit what is normal in Massachusetts. I'm telling you, I want an answer. He is not shy. He will speak his mind. That defense team and Karen Reed were all shitting in their pants, waiting for that verdict, because they knew that if they came back with anything, she was going to prison. Watch Boundless Millennials short on, God, what's it called? I reposted it here on my channel too, about it's just a short, a 1-minute thing. She's fucking scared out of her mind. Karen looks like she's gonna fall over because she can't breathe trying to get the hell away from that courthouse. She's probably trying to figure out how to get to fucking Cuba right now, because she is going to prison. And anybody who is paying any of these creators, you're literally giving your money to liars, cheaters, stealers, thieves, and murderers. And the worst part is, they victimize the entire community.
You go public, and you want people to know what really happened. And they probably speak to people like you or others and let it out and explain in gory detail what happened, because they don't want that on their conscience. If their position is we acquitted her, and that's not what the court is going to do.
They didn't acquit her. If they acquitted her, they would have handed the note to Judge Canone, and it would have said not guilty. And then they could have said, well, we agree on these two not guilties, but we're hung on this. Do you think that mature educated adults could handle that? Or are you calling them so incompetent that they can't even figure out how to communicate the fact that they agreed on these two? They know, they've went to the judge 3 or 4 times by this point and said, we're not coming to any conclusion. We're not going to be able to come to a consensus. We are divided in our beliefs so strongly that to push us further would be asking us to violate our own ethics and morals, basically. That's what that last note said, okay? But you're telling me and all of your followers that don't take the time to look for the facts on their own, you're telling me that they agreed on two things? That note does not reflect that. And if they did, I think that the person that wrote that was intellectually superior to most jurors, and he could have communicated that and likely would have said, you know, we agree on these two charges. She was charged with 3 offenses, plus each offense has all these lesser includeds, okay? So if they agreed on anything, he would have frickin' put that in his note. I think. I would, and I don't know that my intelligence reflects the same amount of intelligence that that person seemed to represent. So, I mean, it's ludicrous.
Because they didn't enter the verdict properly, because they were confused and they can't even explain that, then there's nothing else for them to do other than share with it publicly and just make the scandal get worse.
But what if they're afraid of like being doxxed or putting themselves out there?
They've already contacted the lawyers. I mean, it seems to
anonymously. Their names aren't out there. Like the Twitter.
Yeah, they've contacted only the defense attorneys. Does that strike any of y'all as odd? Do you think that maybe they would call the Commonwealth, the governor, the mayor, people? Like, okay, I can hear y'all saying, well, they're all corrupt. Well, I don't think all of the government officials, let's say governor, mayor, something to that effect, if you want to say that they're all corrupt and they're not going to communicate properly to the people that need to know, why don't you do your research on Lally? I know y'all think that he's a big running joke, but that man took on 3 top dollar defense attorneys and had a draw. And that man did it by himself. And he did it in a very monotone, boring way. I agree with you. But that man is smart. He knows the case. He knows what he's doing. His reputation is unimpeachable. And he has more dignity and ethics and morals in his pinky than any and all of you have in your whole entire accumulated existence. It's ridiculous. Do your research on him. If there's an issue, I think that if you're going to go to the defense, probably at least call the Commonwealth as well, because then you know that you've got this backup, right? Like, okay, well, we're going to call the defense because we trust the defense because the Commonwealth is so corrupt, right? So you call both. That way the defense knows that you're calling them. You say, hey, I'm going to call them just so you know. So if they don't communicate that to you, then there's more corruption. I mean, you could prove your point further, right?
Aren't making memes yet.
Okay. So if I'm a juror and I want to speak to you and I say that the cost of doing business is I don't want to tell you my name, you're going to do that interview if you can verify who they are through some other means, right? If you trust what they're...
Of course he is, because he's doxed all of the jurors. He knows all of the jurors. He should have never been allowed in that courtroom. He has victimized and traumatized so many people in this case, and yet he was in there with all the jurors and is putting out information about these jurors. So how does Alan Jackson know that these are jurors? Because Turtle Boy got all that information and made sure he took notes. And I'm sure that the defense did as well as the Commonwealth. They know that information. So all they have to do is say, hey, Jim Bob, why don't you call up this guy and tell him I'm a juror, but I don't want to tell you my name, but I'll tell you what I did and this and that and the other thing. They're going to know who the fuck it is, but that information can be relayed to any one of these little turtle riders.
I'm going to tell you. So, yeah, I think eventually it just invites it to come out.
Yeah, I think it would be, obviously, and this is fantasy, but like it would be a really strong statement if like the 12 of them just write something up and they sign it and say, here is what we all agreed happened. We all...
Again, not going to happen. I'm going to stop because I can't handle the amount of stupidity and absolute moronic statements that are being made here. So I just wanted to make a point that this is ridiculous, and the fact that lawyers on YouTube are claiming to know better than criminal defense attorneys who are not on law tubing because they're too damn busy, because they're actually practicing attorneys, and or prosecutors who make a ton less money and don't spread a bunch of lies in the public because they want to protect the integrity of their case. They're looked down upon. The prosecution is about truth. And again, I know that there's corruption, and I know that there's corruption in that area. Based on the little bit that I know about the Sandra Birchmore case, I see that there. Most likely, I haven't dug in enough yet to figure out what the hell is going on, but I'm going to go ahead and call out the U.S. Attorney Josh Levy. He's involved in this up to his balls and beyond. Okay? So you need to come out and let the public know that the FBI is done. The worst they found are Proctor's text messages. Investigation has been over for a very long time. The FBI knows that there's no corruption going on in the Karen Read case. The FBI knows that there's no cover-up or any of this bullshit. And that's it. They're done. Josh Levy, you need to own your bullshit and come out and tell the people. Because this can't continue to embroil. You're going to end up with a city on fire. You want riots in your streets over this shit? Because that's what these people are doing. They're inciting hatred and vitriol in your community because you got balls deep into something that you should have never interfered with. I don't know if you're corrupt. I don't know if you got frickin' tricked. But one way or the other, I know that you know that Karen Read is guilty. So come out and let the public know that the FBI is done and their investigation is over and everything else will move forward as planned. You owe that to both sides of the plate here. It's going to piss them off because they're not going to be able to say, oh, the feds are investigating all of these corrupt police officers, when the only corruption they found is not corruption. They found some text messages that hurt Karen's feelings. Oh, I beg to differ. Karen Read does not have feelings. She has no shame and no guilt. If she had any integrity, she would at least ask these people to stop harassing John O'Keefe's family. Let's just start there. Stop harassing John O'Keefe's family. Why don't you do that, Karen? Because you're a biatch? Because you're a cunt? Sure seems like it to me. If I murdered somebody, I would expect for people to call me a bitch and a cunt. I think it's pretty fucking fair. Check yourselves, people. Think about who you're listening to. These are not credible sources. And unless you actually read court documents and watch the entire trial and listen to what both sides say, then you don't know the facts. Again, I went into this thinking she was innocent. I know for a fact this woman is guilty. And in my humble opinion, she is a psychopathic narcissist. And I don't say that lightly. I am saying that based on her behavior and her reactions and her lack of reaction. People that laugh and find humor in other people's pain and misery are psychopaths. And that's what she is doing. She's finding pleasure in creating pain in the lives of people who she feels like should have, protected her as a murderess. It's disgusting. Please take a beat, people. think about what you're doing. I really hope for love and light for all of you. Stop spreading hate. Please. Love you all.